all. This is another video, quick walkthrough of your first major writing project, which I'm calling story number one. Exciting title for it, right? So let me take you over there. So here we are at the front page. Let's click on modules. Once again, the most important button on this Canvas site. So let's come down here. There are 3 things linked in week number 1 for story number 1, the final draft. This is the instructions for the essay itself, plus where you'll submit your final draft. The cover letter, there's a cover letter that goes with both of the stories, and then the proposal, which you'll turn in before, the week before we do our peer editing and your final draft is due. But this is like a brainstorming activity to help you think through the activity or think through the project. If we skip down to week 3, you'll see that's where we do peer editing, and I'll have more to say about that as we get closer, so don't worry about that yet. Let's talk about these 3 documents though. Let's talk about, let's start with proposal. Why not, right? So in the proposal, if you open that, you'll see mostly it's just some instructions for that and then a link to the document I want you to fill out. So, oh, there we go, it's up here. So let me just open that up. We'll take a look at the proposal. So here's the proposal, instructions for it. It's just mainly a brainstorming activity, thinking about it, starting to plan out your essay. You can start working on this right away and just save it and come back to it and work on it as you get more ideas. So there's some instructions. There's 2 tables I want you to fill out, then 3 questions. And of course, you can expand the table as much as you want. This proposal should be about 2 pages by the time you're done. Because I want you to think about the setting, your protagonist, any other characters in your story, what the conflict is, what point of view you're going to use. Okay, so just some basic elements of any short story that you should be thinking about beforehand. And then you can just describe this. Let's say, I don't know, it's in the mountains, it's in California, it's hot, it's a summer, and then why you would want to set it there. What is that adding to your story? And that's really kind of the important part. Because, it's okay setting, I don't know, I'll make it, the story takes place in a park in the winter and it's snowing. I don't know, why not? Well, why not? We need to think about the rationale. Why would you do that? What is that adding to your story? If your story is about, say, an elderly person facing their own mortality or something like that, then yeah, the idea of having it happen in a park, kind of empty, people are leaving for the night, it's a little bit lonely and snow's just starting to fall. Right? You get that. That's what we call pathetic fallacy, where the weather and the outside environment is giving us an insight into the interior of the character, and that might be a rationale why you would set a story there. Okay, so that's what I'm thinking about with this table here, just ideas that you're thinking about for your story, and then why you would use those ideas. And again, you can add to this as you go through the next couple weeks as you think about your story. Second table is getting into planning out your plot. So using that Freytag's pyramid, which we talked about in week number 1, what's going to happen in the first part of your story, the exposition, the second part, the rising action, so on and so forth, just helping you plot out your story. Use point form, right? Use point form for both these tables. This is just to get ideas, this is just to generate ideas and brainstorm. And then there's a couple questions, and again, expand, take as much, answer, use full sentences for the second part. So use as much space as you want here. What do you want your reader to learn and understand from your story? What's the point of your story, right? Short stories can be mostly for entertainment, but there has to be a kind of point to it. Is it about, heroes overcoming obstacles? What's it about? What do you want readers to get from it? What obstacles and challenges might you face? How will you overcome these? When and where will you write the story, right? So some more kind of logistical questions to ask. Okay, so that's the proposal. Let me close that too. Let's go back to modules. Take a look at the cover letter. Okay, so the cover letter, we're going to be talking about publishing, how you publish your short stories, how you can make a living writing these kind of things. So part of the assignment for every one of for both of your stories that you write will be to include a cover letter, right? So it's a separate page. It doesn't count towards the word count of your story, but it's not meant to be, it's not a super long thing, right? Right, here's an example of a cover letter that this professional author is posted, right? This is the kind of thing. This is someone Elise is writing. She's a professional publisher, right? So she gets cover letters all the time from potential authors. She's seen a lot of these, so that's why I'm using this blog post to give you a little insider input into this. You know, I've worked as a publisher or worked in publishing before as an editor, but this person has a lot more relevant contemporary experience, current experience. So, you know, this is what your cover letter, it's not a long task, but it's meant to help you professionalize and think about if you were to try to publish one of your stories, how would you market yourself? How would you approach someone to do this kind of thing? Okay, so that will be submitted at the same time as the final draft of your stories. And you can make up details, as I note here, so you can create a fake publication that you are writing to, right? Make up all the details you want. If you want to look up a real publication, that's great too. But this is helping us to professionalize and think about how we market and conceptualize our stories. You know, part of this, you're also describing your story, so it's a good chance for you to think about, well, what am I trying to accomplish in this story? Okay, so the cover letter goes along with, or is submitted at the same time. It's a separate submission, right? You'll submit it using this link here. Okay, so that's the cover letter. Let's go back and talk about the story itself. I'm kind of dancing around this. So, story number 1. Basically, I want you to think about the stories we've read in the first couple weeks of the course. We're reading a number of what I would call classically structured short stories. These are not very experimental short stories. The one that we're reading, Secret Stream, is a contemporary story, but I would call it very classically structured. It's not pushing any of the boundaries of form or structure in any way. I chose that story because it's a great story to think about setting, right? And we'll have more to say about that in week 2. But, you know, we're starting by thinking about classically structured stories. We're working on some basic terminology about plot and some of the basic elements of short stories. So for this first story, I want you to try to follow in this mold and write a short story that focuses on one profound moment in your protagonist's life that changed for better or for worse the course of their life, right? So as I note here, basically, I want you to write a classically structured short story with an epiphany at the climax, right? Your protagonist realizes something about the world, right? Much like we saw in the story of an hour, right? That very classically structured short story. Beyond that, what you do is up to you, right? You can write about anybody, any setting, any character, any genre. If you want to write a Western or a science fiction story or fantasy story, I'm open to all that stuff. That's fine. What we're working on, the skills we're working on for this first paper is about structure and character and you know, setting as well. Some of the basic elements. What I want you to think about is how do you structure a story using that kind of classic structure, you know, exposition, rising action, climax with that epiphany, that moment of realization, right? How do you write a classically structured short story? And how do you use character and setting to help you focus on that, the theme of your story, right? You can write, as I note here, it can be bright and uplifting, it can be dark and depressing, right? The tone and the kind of message is up to you. Again, classic structure, and think about how you show character through action, imagery, and dialogue, rather than telling your readers overtly what they should think about a character, right? All the characters that we see in the stories that we read in this course are created through showing rather than telling, as they say, right? The imagery, the action, what they say helps the reader, you know, reach conclusions and form conclusions about who the character is, what their motivation is, all that kind of stuff, right? And that's one of the big differences between, you know, what I would call literary fiction, right? Good fiction that people read for, you know, decades and centuries versus, you know, kind of disposable genre fiction. And, you know, I love genre fiction. I love science fiction and Westerns and lots of other stuff. But at the same time, there's a lot of fiction that gets published in genres which is not meant to be very deep or very challenging for the readers, right? The writer will tell you overtly the motivations of the characters and all of their characteristics and all that kind of stuff, and leave very little to the imagination. Better, more literary fiction doesn't do all that work for the reader and instead relies on things like imagery, action, dialogue to help create that. Okay, so that's what we're trying to work on for this first story: classic structure, developing character, using character in more subtle and interesting ways. So the structure, again, classic structure. We're going to be watching a video in week 2 called Writing Narratives, and they go through a great, they go through all these structural things too. So that's a good thing to look at if you're, wanting to structure this. Think about Freytag's pyramid. Think about all that. Beyond that, I'm not going to tell you paragraph 1 has to do this, paragraph 2 do this. It's up to you, right? As a creative writing course. If you're struggling with this, come and talk to me. We can work it out. We can work out what you want to get at and think about some plot ideas. Some tips: complete all the writing process. Start with that proposal. Do it ahead of time. Spend some time with it. It's really going to pay off if you do. If you just do it at the last minute, it's not going to be as useful. Remember, you're doing more than just telling a story, just throwing some plot details on the paper, right? You want things to add up to a certain idea about your characters and about the situation. Remember, vivid detail is super important. Use the senses other than just vision, right? Think about smell, touch, taste. All these kinds of things create more vivid scenes, and we'll be talking about that as the weeks go on. Oh, finally, I'll just note, please format your paper properly, right? It's a creative writing course, but please do use 12-point Times New Roman font, double space, 1-inch margins, all that stuff. The paper itself should be at least 5 pages, if not longer. So, please do start thinking about it earlier rather than later. Final thoughts: believe in yourself and do not procrastinate. This should say 13. I'll have to go and change that. The final grade is worth 13% of your final grade, if I remember correctly. I'll have to double check that. Anyways, also there's a bonus mark if you take a draft of this paper to the Success Center, which is available online. You can work with a tutor and you can get a bonus mark for that work. And you just they'll send you a slip, like a receipt of your time with the tutor, and then you just email that to me and you can get a bonus mark. Okay, so that's it. Please do email me if you have any questions or concerns. Hopefully you're watching this within the first couple days of the course, so please do email me right away if you have any questions or concerns. Okay, thank you very much.